Okay, so ultimately today we are getting ready to go over all of our data for, Chester County specifically. And the reason why I don't know why it's doing what it's doing, but um, there we go, that's what I wanted. The reason why we are doing these particular meetings today, Troy, is because we want to provide kind of a transparency and provide data for each county that tnAchieves is currently serving in. And so basically when Tennessee Promise went into effect back in 2015, part of the kind of agreement was that the kind of county mayor in each area would create and develop a local advisory council of different groups, different organizations, and they would essentially receive the data we provide them, and then they can provide guidance, feedback, a layer of accountability. Just because we are working with those students in that community, we wanted to hopefully have these ideas being shared back and forth. So this is the reason why we're doing these. We are doing 91 of them this week, one for kind of a statewide overview, and then the rest are county by county for each of the counties we serve. And so we used to do these in person, but the past year and a half has obviously been a different year for everybody due to the pandemic. And so we've opened these up by Zoom, and we were able to invite more people. And so I know more people will end up getting this video as well, so they'll get these numbers in a different way. But we'll be together, obviously, today going over them. So at any point, though, if you have questions, definitely don't hesitate to ask. That's why we do have the cameras and mics available to be on. And hopefully at the end of today, you'll have any questions you may need answered. So as we jump into it, just a quick review of kind of who tnAchieves is and kind of what we've done since we started back in 2008. We are a nonprofit 501c3 that is privately funded. And we are the partnering organization for the Tennessee Promise in 90 of the 95 counties across the state of Tennessee. As you can see, there are 5 gray ones. Those are served by the AIRS Foundation. But in the 90 counties that we serve, since 2008, we've worked with over 440,000 students, 71,000 volunteer mentors. And then, since we are going across the state, we are also working with the staff of over 600 Tennessee high schools and the staff at 67 post-secondary institutions that are eligible for Tennessee Promise. So we cover a lot of ground. We are about a staff of 30, I believe now. And, we try to get around. We'd rather do these in person if we could, but we try to do these virtually now. This slide here is just a reminder of kind of some of the things that tnAchieves does in its program for each of the students that applies for Tennessee Promise. And so the kind of the top 3 there, the Tennessee Promise logo, the kind of people sitting on a bench, and the shovel guy are there to represent the last dollar scholarship, the volunteer mentor aspect of our program, and the community service requirement that every student is required to complete. The reason I focus on those is because those have been pillars of the tnAchieves program, even from before it was a statewide program. When we were doing this privately funded in certain counties across the state, these were all things that were still part of that program. And so the one big thing is obviously the last dollar scholarship. That's the big carrot that is sold to the students and the families that tells them that regardless of what their situation may be, they are guaranteed to have their tuition and mandatory fees covered through some means, either by promise or through other financial aid that they may be eligible for. That was there before when we were just tnAchieves back in 2008, and that's still here today as we are a statewide program across the state of Tennessee. But the volunteer mentor and community service aspect are things that are still here today, but were also there with us in 2008. The volunteer mentor is something that we've seen is a super critical piece for especially the type of students that we are targeting for Tennessee Promise. Those students that would otherwise maybe fall through the cracks during the summertime when they leave kind of the comfort of their high school and trying to figure out all the things they need to do before they transition to college for the fall semester. The volunteer mentor kind of fills that role for us. Since we do work with just a ton of students every single year, we can't have that one-on-one connection that we would want to. But by having the recruited volunteer mentor, somebody who's working with 5 to 10 students at a time, they are able to kind of develop a relationship with their students and be there as kind of an encourager and a resource for them as they are making that transition from high school to college. And so it is something that is super important to our program. It's something that we're really proud that we're able to offer to every student that does apply for Promise and enrolls with tnAchieves. Then again, the community service is just something that we feel the importance of giving back. since students do have this opportunity to go to school with this last dollar scholarship, we do find it important that they give back to their community. And so we'll talk a little bit about the community service numbers statewide and then in Chester County specifically. But it's just an important thing to hopefully they get that sort of feeling of giving back and realizing that it's important to help those organizations that are around them that have helped them get through and up to the point today where they're able to start school. The bottom two things, the one with the little sun symbol and the person sitting at a desk, are two newer initiatives that tnAchieves has been using or doing for the past couple of years. And their main focus is on preparation and retention. We all know that college access is a big key part for a lot of the students across the state of Tennessee, but the work doesn't stop when you get a student to school. And so instead, programs like the Summer Bridge program, Summer Institute, and our Complete program are built in to not only prepare a student for their first day and their first semester of college, but also to make sure that they understand that they still have resources available to them that they can turn to whenever they may hit a speed bump, so that way they don't just fall or drop out at the first sign of a challenge. And so I'll talk a little bit about the summer programs. Every year across all 13 community colleges, we host a 3-week kind of academic boot camp. And we target students that would otherwise have to take learning support classes. So those that maybe because of their ACT scores or their just curriculum in high school, they didn't maybe pass the classes they needed to, would have to start in these classes at, say, Jackson State. If they did that, that'd be fine. They'd be covered by Tennessee Promise, but it would most likely put them a semester behind when it came to kind of their timeline. And so the Summer Bridge program, it focuses on English, math, and reading. All students take those classes and they get a chance to test out at the beginning of the program before they have all of those classes. And then again, at the end of the 3 weeks to hopefully test out of those learning support classes. And in this past cohort, we actually saw an 89% success rate with the students we were working with, which meant they either tested out or they improved at least from the beginning to the end of the summertime. And so not only are they possibly testing out, but they're also getting kind of their feet wet, getting on a campus before most students are, and kind of getting those, spider webs or whatever that they may have, and just kind of going right into their fall semester afterwards. The
Matthew,
summer, yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. When you say test out, go over that part again. When you said 80+%, I can't remember if it's 83, but what are they testing out of again? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so basically every student that is participating in the program, they would be placed in a learning support class. But there is a test at the community college level that's called the AccuPlacer that the student is able to take. And if they pass it, they are able to basically get credit for that learning support class, which then means that they can immediately enroll in the college credit earning either English or math class. And so for this past year, we had 89%. So show a success rate, which was either testing out or improving from the beginning to the end of the summertime. So that's essentially what that means there.
Well, so let me just make sure, because again, I'm old and some of the language you're saying. So that would be like, I used to be an adjunct faculty at Jackson State, and at Jackson State, I was teaching those developmental math courses where if a student's threshold on the ACT, say for math, was below par and they weren't qualified to go right into those college credit bearing courses, then I would teach those courses. So what you're saying is that Summer Bridge program gives them the opportunity to get through that developmental. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly, you nailed it on the head. Basically, those kids would be, planned to take those classes, but if they participate in the program, they have the opportunity to kind of take like a hybrid version of those classes during the summertime, those 3 weeks, and then get a chance to test out of them. And if they test out, then guess what? They can go and directly enroll into the college credit earning classes. Yep.
Let me go a little bit deeper in the weeds here then. Since that is, and I don't know where I don't know if you know where, did I, when I register, provide what I do for a living? Or do you just, I'm just a volunteer?
I don't, I know that there was a list, but I can't remember.
Okay, well, I'm superintendent of schools in Chester County. So I've, that's part of the reason why I'm really much heavy into this. But can I have access as a mentor, or do the mentors have access to know where those kids are with their threshold of, say, ACT scores? I know I can gain it.
Right.
My role, but is it FERPA? Does FERPA get involved with this?
So the mentors themselves wouldn't know where a student stood when it came to kind of what college level classes they would be needing to. But if they signed up for the summer bridge program, which a mentor would know because it would be kind of, and I'll talk about this on their Connect profile, they would have an idea that the student most likely is probably going and doing this program because of that, at least one class. They may not need it for all 3 classes, but they may need it for one of the courses before they start to school. So there's not necessarily a admission of it, but they would know. And sometimes the students will just come out and tell the mentor themselves because they will have been talking since probably around February. And this doesn't happen until the summertime. So the mentor themselves may know about it, and then they are the ones that are pushing the student to sign up for the said summer bridge program.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll talk about the other programs, the Summer Institute. Esther knows this one because she's based out of Memphis. But we have for a couple of years been doing a kind of a 6 to 10 week program. This year it was 6 weeks due to the pandemic, but we're kind of the urban core of Memphis is targeted, and they get like a really intense academic boot camp. And so they're not only trying to satisfy those learning support classes that they would be needing, but they're also given the opportunity to earn up to 9 college credit hours as well during that time period. And
so there's no, let me pause you right there. So there's no charge, no tuition costs for the students.
So it's all basically kind of in the same way the Last Dollar Scholarship works. They file the previous year's FAFSA, and in most cases, because these students are coming from low-income households, the Pell Grant itself is paying for this introduction period. And so these students, who otherwise would maybe also be a semester behind, are not only getting to kind of catch up, but almost jump ahead with up to 9 credit hours by the end of the summertime. And that's actually one of the cool things from this past year is we had a 100% success rate, which meant all the students all 29 that took part in it actually passed all of their classes. And so they got out of the learning support and they earned 9 credit college hours before they even stepped foot for their fall semester.
Apologize again, just to interrupt. So just to make sure I get that, not every student who goes through Tennessee Promise qualifies for that. That's an income-based determination.
So this one is based just in Shelby County, and it's targeting, like I said, kind of like the urban core schools in Memphis. But our hope is that we will start to expand this statewide. I know we've tried to move it into like Davidson County and target those areas, but the goal is hopefully with time, this will be another program that is just like the Summer Bridge program available across the state. But these are kind of serving as proof points for the time being.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay, so then let me jump real quick into the complete program, which Esther is a great example of. We have about 17 or 18, I forget what it is now, complete coaches on staff who are working with students across the state in their particular service area. So Esther, for instance, is working with Dyersburg State and Jackson State service area students. And these are the students who are generally at their most at risk of, kind of transitioning from high school to college. So they typically have a very low EFC based on their FAFSA, coming from a low income background. And what our coaches are doing are basically kind of taking the baton from the mentors and checking in with them regularly, at least once or twice a month, kind of getting to know them on a more personal level and kind of being that resource for them as they're navigating what it's like to be in college for the first semester, what it's like to pick their classes they're struggling with, how do they talk with their professors, how do they just handle, any sort of life challenges they may have that come with school. That's what our complete coaches are doing with them on a day-to-day basis. And the great part about it is because it is statewide, we're able to target this group of students that would otherwise maybe fall through the pipeline. This has been going on now. This is year 3, I believe, Esther. And it's just something that we continue to expand and add more and more things to. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about it more at the end of this. So let me jump into some of the numbers, and then we can trace back onto all of this moving forward. Talking about the tnAchieves reach, this is kind of similar to that second slide I showed you, but it's just kind of showing you the communities that we work in. So all 90 counties that we serve, 74 of which are considered rural, 35 of them are considered at risk based on the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And then over 600 high schools, and then 67 colleges that we work with or that students are eligible to go to if they have Tennessee Promise. So that bottom line is showing you the breakdown of where most students are going that are Promise eligible based on the school type. So about 8 out of 10 are going to community college in their area, and then the other 20% are being split between a 4-year college and a TCAT. In more of the rural counties, though, those numbers might be a little bit offset because I know the TCATs are a little bit more prevalent. There's a couple more options generally as well. So those numbers may not be exactly for the same for Chester, but generally around the state, that's kind of how those breakdowns occur. This then dives, again, a little bit further back and shows you kind of the entire cohort at a time. So Every year, Tennessee Achieves is getting over 60,000 students that we work with. A couple of years ago, we had about 64,000, which was our highest number. Of those 60,000 plus students, they make up about 89% of all high school seniors across the state. So the other portion is going to be covered by heirs, like I said, and then there's like a handful of seniors across the state that maybe aren't applying for Promise because, maybe they already have their plan set up and they know they're going out of state and they just don't apply. But almost 9 out of 10 seniors across the state are applying for Promise, and then they are being part of the Tennessee Achieves program. Of those people, 78% of all first-time freshmen at a Tennessee community college are going through the Tennessee Achieves program. So if you were to go to a campus now at, say, like Jackson State, almost 8 out of 10 of those students will have applied for Promise and gone through the Tennessee Achieves specific program. And then the same going for, if you were to look at college graduates from a community college, 86% of them are students that would have applied for Promise and then gone through the Tennessee Achieves program. So we're very much tied in with our partner schools. And so if we're succeeding, we're then seeing those results, at the community college level as well. And this would also be the same for the TCATs and for the four-year universities. The middle line is just kind of some fun facts that we find pretty interesting, that out of all the students that apply for Promise, at least from the Tennessee Achieves cohorts, 56% of them on average are being eligible for federal financial aid. So almost 1 out of 2 students is going to receive some sort of Pell Grant, whether that be the full amount or at least a partial amount. They are going to be eligible for that. And so that's why we push the FAFSA as a requirement so hard for students along with the school systems, because we know that for most students, there's going to be some sort of money available to them outside of just Promise. The 40% number is a self-reported number of first generation, but that's what the students are identifying as when they apply for Tennessee Promise. So take that one a little bit of a grain of salt because it is self-reported, but we just like to kind of put that there as well. And then 51% of students, when they are getting to school, are pursuing a health science field or a STEM field. And the reason we bring that up is because that kind of ties in with the overall state's mission of the Drive to 55, of trying to create a workforce that is trained and ready to fill the jobs that they're trying to recruit to the state. And so the fact that students are focusing on a lot of these high level fields is a really positive note, because they're setting themselves up for success for a job that they know should be waiting for them when they actually graduate from school, and one that will kind of help sustain them after college graduation. And then the last little bit is just the operating costs for Tennessee Promise, and then for Tennessee Achieve specifically. So that $32 million amount is handled by the state. They handle all of the actual last dollar scholarship amount. And Tennessee Achieves, most of that $2.5 million is privately fundraised, with a small portion of it coming from the state to help us operate that complete program that I mentioned a couple slides back. Okay, now we're getting to the nitty gritty stuff. We're gonna actually look at Chester County. So this slide here is showing us FAFSA filing rates for the past year, and then community service hours that have been submitted. So you'll see last year, or for this past cohort, the class of 2021, statewide, we were at an 86% FAFSA filing rate. That's still leading the nation, but it was actually a drop from 90% the previous year. And so that's something that we want to work towards now for this next cohort. But we kind of see that as kind of like almost like the COVID bump. We saw a lot of areas where there was a little bit of a decrease, but that just shows all the more impressive what Chester County did, because you guys were at a 98% FAFSA filing rate of all students that applied for Tennessee Promise, which is remarkable. I haven't seen a number that high out of all of the 90 that I've been looking at. So that's a testament to
this with you, since I can provide some justification for that. We were previous, before joining the Tennessee Promise, we were the part of a group of Southwest districts with the READY program. And then when the READY program exited, we were still budgeting for that READY counselor to be in the high school to support that. So what we did instead is we were able to hire a recent retiree from the Jackson-Madison County school system who was looking for some smaller gig, but still within that same realm of work. And we hired Lisa Carson. Of course, I know her name. Maybe she'll have the notoriety that she deserves, because I would say that primarily the reason why that FAFSA filing rate is at 98% is because of her due diligence. But we hired her with that same funding to support us. So she's on a 120-day contract with Chester County High School. serving specifically as that senior level counselor, and also regarding the work that you guys are needing. So
Cool. That's awesome. That's a great, and it's almost kind of like a hybrid of what I know the Heirs Foundation has somebody in the schools as
sure.
well. So you're kind of being able to combine both of those. But it's a really great number. Like you saw, there was a drop off on the statewide number, but no drop off really for Chester County. So really impressive. And then the community service numbers, like you said, we've only been working with Chester County for a couple of years now, but those are already the number of hours that Chester County students have submitted for their Tennessee Promise requirements. And that's what it's contributing to the statewide number, which is something that we're super proud of, which was just under 3.4 million in the time that we've been doing since tnAchieves back in 2008 all the way to today. So once again, these are big things that we really like to highlight because as a state, we do a really good job. And then just from the community service of giving back, it really goes into the volunteer state of just you giving back to your community. So we always like to pinpoint these numbers, but really impressive FAFSA filing rate from Chester County. And then student progress, because we've only been working with Chester County for a couple of years, we don't have a graduation rate of the students we've been working with yet, at least
Right.
not a 6-year one, but this is showing you kind of in the class of 19, kind of where that group of students went. So you see Chester County's numbers, and then you see the statewide numbers, and it shows you how many applicants there were, how many actually ended up enrolling with Promise, and then what the retention rate looks like. And so it's just always important to know that like the applicant number, these are students that for some, it may be their plan A, others it's their plan B or plan C. And so that's why we don't always see every single one of them end up using Promise, because for some it's more of an insurance plan. But when we look at the retention rate, Chester County is right with the statewide level, actually 1% higher. And so 2 out of 3 that start with Promise in the fall of after their high school senior year are retaining to their second year. And that's something that we're proud of, but we know that there's still a lot of work to be done. And so that's why some of those things I talked about with summer programs and the complete program are in place, because we want to see those retention numbers grow over the next couple of years, because that's ultimately the goal of all of this, is not to get them to school and let them be, it's to get them there and then help support them to where they can actually earn their credential. So this is kind of taking, again, a step back, and this is just showing you statewide level numbers, but it is showing you in the gray, these are students that are going to a community college and are considered first-time full-time freshmen. So these could be Promise students, but these can also be the other group of students that aren't Promise. And so their first-year retention rate is at a 53% rate. But if we look at then Tennessee Achieves students that go to any eligible institution, so this can be students that are going to the community college, the TCAT, or the 4-year universities that are eligible, they're retaining at that 67% number, which we saw in the previous slide. But if we then go and take a step back out again and look at just anybody that applied for Tennessee Promise and then go to a school, their rate of retention is at 74%. So those are going to be your students that possibly go to community college, TCAT, or they're maybe going to the UTs, they're going to MTSU, they are going to Western Kentucky, they're going out of state. If they've applied though for Promise and they're in the Tennessee Achieves program, basically up until their fall semester, they're getting all the Tennessee Achieves benefits, things like the mentor, they're getting the communication reminders, anything that's affiliated with Tennessee Achieves. We're seeing that those students are retaining at a higher rate compared to just if we look at the normal general population at a community college. And then the same can be seen in the 6-year graduation rate. You'll see 35% for the first-time full-time freshmen, and then for those that start at the community college but were Tennessee Achieves students, it's at a 16% higher rate. And so once again, those numbers aren't like amazing, but they are growth. Since the time we started back in 2008, the community college graduation rate was much, much lower. And so it's moved its way up to 35%, but that's still not good enough. And so we are, like I said, putting our head down, we are focusing on retention, and that's what those boxes on the right-hand side are showing, that we are seeing early data results from things like the summer programs, things from our complete programs, and then from something that we're piloting out in Knox County called Knox Promise. All 3 of those are showing positive results and things that we're going to continue to push and try to expand to a more statewide level. So that way we can hopefully see these retention rates trickle down across all the counties that we serve. And just to give you, I talked about summer programs to complete, but Knox Promise, we have through a private donor in Knox County, we are able to, instead of only focusing on those lower income students in each county, every Knox County student is paired up with a coach. So we have 5 coaches just working in the Knox County area. And so they're able to basically check in on these students, and no one is left out in that particular area. But in addition to that, they are also eligible for what are called completion grants. These completion grants, through the private funding that we have in that program, allow students to submit a request for things like food insecurity, transportation costs, maybe assistance with some bills if they're living independently, things that come with going to school that aren't covered, in your tuition. So things that may serve as a speed bump or a challenge for students. We are trying to show this as a proof point that will then allow us to hopefully advocate and make this be a statewide program. So that way students in any county that we serve, if they face those same sort of challenges, will be able to access the complete grant requests if they meet the kind of financial needs. And then that way we can hopefully help resolve at least some of these issues and allow them to spend more of their time focusing on just going to school and being a student. The next slide is just showing you the college going rate. So once again, we saw Tennessee Achieves was right in that mid 50s, and then Tennessee Promise goes into effect, and we see that giant jump of 4.6% in 2015. That happens, like I said, when Tennessee Promise comes into play, and then it kind of levels out over the next couple of years, right between 62 and 64%. But then the year 2020 comes, and we see kind of another COVID hit here. College rate goes down by a significant amount. If we look at Chester County, you guys stayed pretty much right at the same level, which is, again, another impressive effort of just the collective school system. I'm sure making sure that these students are as prepared as possible when you guys were thrown very much a challenging year of impacting these students. But our goal is saying, how can we make sure that we get that college going rate across the state back up, or continue to see it creep up little by little? And so that takes us then to what our ask is. And that is saying, okay, local advisor councils that we're talking to, they can help us spread the word on that. Mentors are really going to be our best bet of being able to connect with our students, because although we feel like we have a really good plan of action, working with 60,000 students, we can't make that intimate connection with them the way that the teachers, the mentors, or the counselors at the schools can. But since a mentor is only working with 5 to 10 students, they can get to know their students and they can help guide them through those same challenges, especially during the summertime when maybe they aren't going to school anymore. And so we're basically just asking anybody that, if they have the time, they have 12 hours in a year, they can be that task manager, that resource, that encourager for these group of students. And what they'll do is they'll do it in the same way that Tennessee Achieves has worked with mentors in the past. They'll be calling, texting, and emailing, whatever's kind of their comfort level. And they'll be able to use what's called tnAchieves Connect. It's a system that we've invested in this past year. Since we knew that everything went virtual, we had this system where mentors are able to essentially, they make a profile, and when they log in, they see all of their students in the system. So they're able to immediately chat with them in that system. They can see on their profile certain fields that show them what are their indicators for Tennessee Promise, like have they met the certain deadlines that are coming up. Here's their contact information, the schools that they go to, the school that they're thinking of going to college to, all that information all in one place. And so all of that's going to be available for any mentors, as well as we are also going to try to host some open houses this year. So instead of going to the schools as we used to go and do these big auditoriums, big gyms. We know that that's probably not going to be the case moving forward. We're going to have these open houses where at the colleges, we just create a place that mentors and students can meet together, spend time with one another, and then ask questions, as well as having a Tennessee Achieves staff member and college staff member there as well. So these are kind of things that we're looking ahead to with 2022, but really just spreading that news is what we ask. In Chester County specifically, we're going to need 28 mentors. And so anybody that was a mentor this past year, the application will be a couple of minutes. It's just basically updating things. And you can see on our website, tnachieves.org/mentors, they have until December 3rd to go ahead and get that done. And then for anybody that's a new mentor, it'll probably take 6 or 7 minutes. They basically just provide us with the information, the school that they want to serve, that sort of thing. And then we'll give them all their information. They'll start to receive communication from us. So next steps, we believe obviously the mentors are kind of the big crucial piece for us that then allows us to do all those other things in retention that we're setting our focuses on. But if you know of any communities, Troy, that we can either come talk to in person, or any listservs that people may want to send information to, we can reach out to myself or the mentor's email right there, and we can provide written information, we can provide PowerPoints, we can provide whatever it is that you feel may be necessary, and then you can send out to your group of friends or group of coworkers or any of that nature. But if you know an organization like a Lions Club, a local chamber, Rotaries, anybody that would have us in person, we'll schedule a date, we'll work with them, and we'll go talk to them in person as well. So really that's the best thing that we can do moving forward with our local advisory council. And then obviously I know that you guys are doing this already at the school systems, but just telling students that the promise application is open for the class of 2022. Last year, we didn't get to go in front of the students due to just the pandemic. And so we think that also affected the numbers a little bit, where some students just didn't apply before the deadline. And so if we can just get the word out, make sure that the class of 2022 is applying, whether it's their plan A, B, or C, then that allows us to track their data as well as make sure that they're getting communication throughout the year that supplements the information they're getting from the school system. But all that to be said, that's kind of the presentation, Troy. Is there anything I can help go back over again or anything I can help clarify?